Okay.
There's Charlie.
Charlie's here.
Hey, everybody.
Okay.
Hi,
Excellent. Hi, Charlie.
Audio.
Okay. Yeah. All good. Perfect. Okay, so everybody is here. We actually have not only a quorum, but we have a full representation from the committee. So I'll call the meeting to order at 3:30 exactly, pretty much. And note that we have Laura Lewis and George McGonigal from Common Council as well. So thank you both for being here. Any changes, additions, deletions, etc.? No, nothing. Okay. Any public comment? I don't see anybody. I don't know if we had anything written. No. I'm taking that as a no from everybody.
None received. No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Silence means no in this case. Okay. Review of meeting minutes from November 10th. Welcome a motion to approve those minutes if it is out there. Thank you, Leslie. Seconded. Charlie, maybe?
Sure, I'll second.
Yeah, great. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes unless there's any amendments? Okay, and that's unanimous. Okay, great. We have one main agenda item on our agenda today. So it's a little unusual for us, but I thought we'd just keep the momentum going in looking at the Inlet Island Urban Renewal Project. So we heard in public comment last week that the development group that's joining us today was going to be interested in presenting their proposed plan for the project. We obviously saw Steve Flash's and his team's proposal in November. And I think you've seen, because Nell circulated by email, that the IURA decided to actually open a very specific RFEI, request for expressions of interest, so that we made sure that we publicly announced that we were entertaining offers for development proposals for Inland Island, so that if any other developers were interested, they also could come forward. And so that process is going to go through the end of January. I'm looking at Nels just to confirm. So the end of January. So we might yet have a couple of other plans to kind of take a look at. It's not at the level of detail as we required for the RFP for the Green Street Garage. So this is really just to give us a sense of concepts for the Inland Island and will allow us to engage as a committee with the IURA board and with members of Common Council to get a sort of sense of kind of direction that might meet needs of the city and the IURA before anybody, us or the development teams, invest any more significant time, money, and effort. So, so this will be a great discussion, I'm sure, today on the proposal we have in front of us from this team. And once the RFEI is concluded, we'll do that again. So let me hand it over to Nels for any other intros, and then we'll invite the development team, I think, as well.
Yeah, I just want to update the members that the IURA did take action at its meeting at the end of November to rescind the preferred developer status for Stephen Flash without prejudice. It has no bearing on the quality of the project they presented, but wanted to clarify that status after conferring with our legal counsel that it would be the best way to go forward is clarify that both at the IURA level and the Common Council level, because the Common Council passed a similar resolution designating Steve Flash as preferred developer. So that was adopted by the IURA in November and will be going to the Planning and Economic Development Committee of the Common Council in December for the parallel resolution. I think I'm not sure what happens if one approves it and the other doesn't, but that's moving forward. And I think there is a general agreement that that would be the best way to clear the table. I talked with Steve Flash and he understands the rationale behind that. So it's moving forward. We'll have an open competition for the best project on the island is the framework here. And I wanted to let you know that earlier this afternoon, Waterfront Alchemy notified me that there was a small change in the project and they were making some revisions. So they'll talk about that in their proposal, but it involves the operator of the hotel in the project. So I think with that, we could just turn it over to Lincoln Morris and let him discuss the proposal, which is written up in your packet as well.
Thank you, Nels. Thank you, everyone, for allowing us to present our project. I'm going to address the change that was made today. As you know, in previous mentions, we had an alliance with the Cambria Hotel Group. We are still, we love their real estate division and their players that had conversations with us for over 2 years. But simultaneously, we were working behind the scenes because we understood a concept that the successful Finger Lakes hotels had one unique thing in common. They were born out of their communities. The Aurora Inn, the Teganic Farms, the Sherwood Inn, the Harbor, they're local based. And so we began exploring what that would look like. The other thing, and again, the Cambria falls into it, it is still a corporate hotel. Their flexibility, their mobility, their ability to change, there were some difficulties there. And we felt that Inlet Island, in order to be successful, had to have a scalable hospitality anchor. And so I want to introduce, and he'll be available for a question later, is Ave Smith from the Argos Inn. We are running with the Argos Inn. They are one of the best hospitality instruments in Ithaca. I've spent a lot of time there. Avi runs something that is truly Ithaca, and his concept, what he presented to us, is truly Ithaca. So you'll hear more about this later. We won't go into specific detail about the Argos, but he'll be available for a question afterwards. Let's talk about the differences. Is Waterfront Alchemy and our group look at Inlet Island as an economic engine. It has this unique geography that, I guess because it's an island, it's surrounded by water. And here, with that opportunity, it has the ability to support water-based businesses and be a strong invitation for visitors to visit Ithaca. I learned that with our Explore Ithaca, puddle dockers, and tour boat business, that it works. It is a charming place. It has invitation. Mark Campanola proved it 25 years ago when he created the most successful restaurant, and one of the most successful restaurants in the Finger Lakes, inviting people to come to a barren wasteland at the tip of an island peninsula in Ithaca. And since then, his business has done nothing but grow. What we're hoping to do is take the assets that are here. I think it's a guess on my part, is 70% of the developable land here belongs to the city of Ithaca. And don't hold me accountable to that percentage. But where you see the red hash marks, these are city lands. And right now they are predominantly supporting two things. One is parking for the neighboring businesses that are Island Fitness, Rasa Spa, Boatyard Grill, the marina functions, Kelly's Dockside, the dock. The other thing they really support is it's a boat parking lot. In the wintertime, you'll see, as you drive by on the bridge, you'll see boats shrunk wrapped for winter storage. You'll see them in front of the building. We wish to change that program to be more of an economic producer. And because we believe this is a visitor destination, we felt that a hotel had a strong component and anchor. I've been involved with a number of projects on Ithaca's waterfront, City Harbor, and having a collaborative partner that is a provider for economic development, like a hotel, helps you redevelop the waterfront. It's expensive to build on this waterfront. Noah, if you could go to the plan that shows our overall concept here. What you see is an orange box. That orange box is just saying this is the site we propose for the hotel. It has some reasons. There are 2 high tension power poles to the north and south of it. We'd like to nestle the hotel between it so high tension cables aren't draping outside the windows of the hotel. And it's a great proximity both to the east shore and west shore. This plan shows, again, the boatyard is owned by Steve Flash and Ithaca Boating Center, so we've shown no development here. But this is what our plan could look like without any interaction with Steve. But if we were to propose some interaction, here's a concept, is if we were to have some east side waterfront access for the hotel, our tour boat dock, an event function tent, this would rely on a collaboration with Steve. One of the first plans that Steve and I talked about was from the south border of the hotel and north would all be the hospitality island. what you see is that marina would be torn down and more parking, but boat slips would be renovated. It would be more of a non-industrial feel, and the marina functions would move to the south. But because we can't present for lands we don't own, these are the two options that we have. What you look and see on the west side is we believe, and it's a core importance, that workforce housing come to Ithaca's waterfront. What's unique about this site, and in our write-up and narrative, we suggest this, is there's already a beautiful seawall there. There's already the start of the promenade. And if we could apply these elements to the workforce component, then some of the costs that would be normally shared or absorbed into a workforce housing project are already there. It makes it affordable. And these amenities were paid for with local and state taxpayer dollars. Why not give it back to the workforce that paid them? This is a great opportunity to bring workforce to Inlet Island. And with this economic and tourism and visitor, we need this workforce close by to these businesses. Noah, if you could jump ahead to the synergies. This is one of the things that when we were dealing with one of the hotel groups, they said, it's amazing what you already have. You have Island Fitness, Rasa Spa, you have Boatyard Grill, you have the boat tour businesses, you have the marina. All of these businesses have a synergy when they're working together, and they create very quickly an economic engine that feeds a visitor program. And so what you see here is what we're proposing. I guess the big difference between Steve's proposal and ours is about marina and water-based businesses and visitor tourism. We believe Inlet Island is a great place to make that happen. There are 4 projects producing market rate housing on the waterfront right now. We want to propose workforce housing. We want to stay away from the market rate housing, but we want to do tourism, and that's what we're proposing here. If there's any questions, we'll open it to questions. Or Noah, are there some stuff that you'd like to share?
Yeah, if I could just kind of talk a little bit about some of the facts and figures of this plan, just taking a step back. You know, the existing city parking is about 184 parking spaces, and then Boatyard Grill has about 43 parking spaces. And I think it's often kind of overlooked just how much pressure there is on this island for parking. And maybe it's not overlooked. I think people who generally park down there or visit Boatyard Grill or Island Health, I think they understand those pressures. So it makes sense that the city is requiring, I think, 80 parking spaces continue to remain public. And we fully recognize that. I think we see that it needs to be even more than 80. That's kind of generally available to the public, just given what's already there. I mean, 180, and it's already pretty well utilized, especially on busy evenings and so forth by Boatyard Grill. So adding that hospitality function and some more modest size housing is going to continue to add to the pressure of that parking. But the one thing I want to point out, though, is that in order to sort of understand and control some of the costs associated with any development, you have to look at what are the assets that are already there. And when, like Link pointed out, the seawall is already there. So if we can sort of take advantage of that, that is critical in terms of helping with the workforce housing. But we also have to look at this parking. It's already there, right? So why would we tear up a parking lot? Not to say sure, it could be improved, it can be paved, there can be plantings, but the layout is there, the infrastructure, the base is there, the infrastructure is there. So if you look at this plan, the existing aerial compared to our plan, you'll notice that all of this is pretty much exactly what's already there. And that's a key way of how we can help control the costs to deliver workforce housing and really focus our energy on redeveloping Taganic Boulevard, which is a city street, and having that remain a city street with parallel parking, sidewalks, curbs, street trees, and really develop that as the spine by which, you know, Steve can continue to develop on the water side, the hotel can be developed, and it really becomes, you know, a city street, a neighborhood street that goes all the way down. To what we're proposing is an expansion of the Boatyard Grill's parking to really formalize that and help them out with more parking that's closer to the Boatyard Grill, as well as some parking that's directly in front of the hotel. So, I guess what I want to just point out is that there's a lot of infrastructure that's already there, and we know there are serious costs associated with the brownfield, with any of these waterfront public benefits and improvements, like the pier at the point that we're trying to incorporate. So we're just looking for ways to really simplify the footprint of these buildings so that we can make the most use of what's already there. I think that's all I wanted to just add in, but happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
I might add one more thing is Ave is here with us today, and I might, in our initial conversations with him, he had an inspirational thing that was shared by us about putting a hotel on the water, and I might just, Ave, do you have a few comments?
Oh, yeah, I mean, in knowing Inlet Island and knowing the potential for its development, it just seems like it should really be a place that is for the public. If it were all residential, I'm sure there could be a walkway on the water, but that wouldn't be nearly as inviting to Ithacans to come there. But having a hotel there turns it into a much more inviting space for the public and for the people of Ithaca to come to. You know, some of the best hotels in New York are a place for the locals to go to and to spend time at. A hotel is the kind of business that can afford to have a lot of public space, a lot of patio space, perhaps. And so anyway, it seems like a hotel is really made that's fun, not just for the locals, but also as a something to draw in more visitors. It is amazing how there's no waterfront hotel in Ithaca at all, as opposed to most every other major town in the Finger Lakes area. And so Ithaca really would do well with a waterfront hotel. I think it'd be quite a draw.
Link, if I could just add one more point, and not to belabor the point of the parking, but we know that there are pressures from various program elements that we're adding, but as well as what's already existing. I think that's the trickiest part about this project, is striking the right balance between how many residential units, how many hotel rooms, you know, what is the right ratio of parking to new uses versus parking in existing uses. What, like Link said, what was really attractive about working with Avi and Argos is it's not as prescriptive as saying it has to be a 110 room hotel, right? If there, I feel like there's flexibility there. You know, if we came back to Avi and said, well, what if we could only fit 80 because of the parking demand and the other uses we want to do? I think there's a willingness there to sort of work with us on that. Whereas the bigger corporate hotels are pretty locked in terms of their model, and they need a certain amount of space and they need a certain number of units. So I just want to say we're super excited about Avi's participation in this project because it really helps change that dynamic. So that's great.
Great. Link, if there's nothing else from your team, I think we can open it up for questions. Is that good for you?
No, yeah, it's good. We're good.
Okay. So I'll just, I'll open it up. I'll invite questions either from the committee or any of the Common Council members who are here. Welcome, Cynthia. Thanks for coming. So yeah, just let's just open it up for questions. Anyone want to start?
Yeah, sure. So how many of the workforce housing, is that 100% workforce, or because the previous proposal had 80% or 20% at 80% AMI? Have you thought through kind of how many of those units are going to be workforce and what percent AMI?
We have, I'll let Noah speak to the details, but that is all going to be workforce housing.
Yeah, so there are 42 units, plus or minus. I mean, it hasn't been fully designed, but approximately 42 units. They would be all affordable, probably in the 80 to 100, and I think it's 120, 120% AMI, just following some of the standards for like green building for the county funds, you know, the city county I'm blanking on the name of that fund, but you know, yeah, I think you guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
But if we were to target some of that, you know, I think it's $30,000 to $40,000 per unit. If we were to kind of fall into that range, I believe it's 80 to 120% AMI, but it would be all of the units.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, how many rooms is that compared to the Argos? I actually don't know how many rooms the Argos has.
The Argus has 13 rooms.
Oh, okay. So quite a bit bigger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, Avi, do you want to talk a little bit about your infrastructure? Because you made some really good points about your business model and what you've established, but how it's bigger than what.
I feel like the Argos. Of course I love the Argos. I feel like it's my baby somewhat, but it's the idea of it is somewhat outgrown the limited capacity of the space that's there, of the beautiful building that's there. We put so much energy into our marketing and our photographs and getting distributed to the online travel sites and learning about the Ithaca hotel market and what works well. And we have such a well-oiled machine now with running the space that, you know, with our reservation system and the team that we have, we could be doing a lot more than 13 rooms. So I've been looking into ways to expand over the last couple of years, expand beyond the limitations of, you know, the historic building that it's currently in. And so, you know, the Argos is ready to do a much bigger project and not be limited by the 13 rooms.
And can you kind of explain, and I don't know if this is the right forum for this or not, but can you explain, is the financing available for this size project across the overall project and the hotel specifically? That's a big jump up from where you are now.
So what we've learned with Waterfront Alchemy and the other projects we're doing, the outside investment interest in Ithaca is significant. But what we're doing here is we're creating business or silos within this development. The Argos is itself a development entity. The workforce housing is a development entity. The waterfront businesses, you'll see there's Steve Flash has his business and the Boatyard Grill, but we have another marine operator coming in from Sodas, who's part of our project, Krenzler Marine. They do a very big boat sales business in Sodas, and they've been trying to get into the Finger Lakes market because there haven't been boat sales in Ithaca for 35 years. And they look at this as an opportunity. The predictions he has is for about $2.5 to $3 million in boat sales. He carries brands that are leading edge, Chaparral, Yamaha, Robolo, and he owes, I'm not really up on his pontoon boat thing, but when he saw this, he said, I want part of this plan, but he wants to create a modern marine facility footprint. And I'll share this with you is we're doing another development project, which is the redevelopment of the Encodema site on Cliff Street. And Krenzler's marine service entity is going to head in that direction. We're going to use this site because the real estate is it's expensive and it's tight. The sales program will be here, the glitz and glamour. There'll be boats in the water here, but the actual servicing and dry docking will be done at the Cliff Street, just up the road for there. So that's the type of smart stuff we need to do. Move marine facilities that don't need to be on the island off of it so that the other businesses can thrive.
Okay, and then the housing and the hotel, which are kind of huge parts of this, how's the financing for those two?
So the way we look at the housing end of it, and then I'll let Avi talk about, he's been financing hospitality. The housing we look at, Waterfront Alchemy would be very interested in doing the workforce housing. It's what we do. We're doing a market rate condominium process on the other end of Inlet Island, but we could also see that some other partner may want to come in and say, hey, we'd like to be involved in this housing. But is there investment opportunity here? Yes, I've got investors that have been asking to be parts of our waterfront businesses. That's the thing about having a vibrant waterfront now. They know about City Harbor. They know we all saw the Green Stars has a few hiccups, but Look at what Arnott Realty did. They dove into Ithaca and wanted to be on Ithaca's waterfront. Is outside investment can be channeled and put together some projects you might not normally see. And I'll let Avi speak about hotel financing. You've done it before.
Yeah, and there's I've done it before putting together the Argos. Of course, this is a much bigger project, and as I said, for quite a while now, I've been looking into doing a bigger hotel project. I have worked with a development group in New York. They actually wanted to buy the Argos in a couple of years ago. I didn't want to sell it, and they've really been looking into having a place in Ithaca, and so I've sort of been on the lookout to with their backing to find a good spot to do a hotel.
Okay, thanks for the answers.
Thank you, Charlie. Other questions?
I have a couple follow-up to that.
Sorry for the dog.
Whoops, that wasn't me. Again, on the Argos, Avi, do you see there be restaurant, bar, other sort of facilities within the hotel?
Oh yes, it wouldn't really be a hotel without a bar, Argos, and food as well. Yeah, it's I think that's a key part to it, and a key part to having the locals come there. It's a critical thing to not just have it be a hotel for the guests who are visiting from out of town, but to have locals come there, and it'll have I'm looking forward to taking some of the creative decor ideas from the Argos and having more of almost like a blank slate rather than being in the historic building and starting from scratch to make a really beautiful space for the public to come to in the bar restaurant space.
Great. And then a question about I see the one design has a kayak launch and some other docks in the flood control channel, and I thought I read that's not really allowed by the state. So how would you petition the state, or what's the process for that?
Well, we'll be able to share more. What we envision in Ithaca, and it's already there, is right now puddle dockers. Jody Denman took the puddle dockers fleet from 44 boats to 110 rental boats this summer and put them on the water. She doubled the size of the staff. We launched from the facility at Waterworks as a pop-up business, which is right next to Kelly's. It was a great facility, and we put a lot of boats out there. NCAA competitive racing ends in May. The last regattas, I think, are mid-May. It follows the calendar year of academics, college. That waterway becomes empty during our biggest summer months. And our kayaks were up and down. If you can picture at one time 100 kayaks out on our inlet, we filled that inlet with kayaks. And it's from June, July, and almost all the way through August, there isn't a conflict with the college racing boats. But the tour boats are going to be a challenge. But again, we're picking up. They're not going to be moored there overnight. They're just going to come here for pickup from the hotel, and then leave, and then they'll do their nighttime bursts at various locations. But again, we don't see that we can always navigate around the schedule of a competitive regatta. Why
what about
that beautiful seawall without using it?
What about the permanent structures along that control channel? Do you have what process is there for getting those approved?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by the permanent.
I think he's referring to the kayak launch, a floating.
And you've got a pier up on the end of the
Yeah.
When the process goes on, we'll share with you the facility that we built at Waterworks, which is one of the best and safest launches, but it is based off a floating platform. In other words, we take it in and out of the water. Matter of fact, it's still in the water right now, but it comes out. It's a modular docking system that can come out. It's not permanent infrastructure. We have ice that controls kind of what you can do with dockage and to the type of docks. So floating docks need to be removed, and permanent docks need to be pile-driven docks because they have to be able to survive an ice flow. So no, we have a great facility. We'll share some pictures of that with a lot of boats going through the facility.
What about links of your promenade to the waterfront trail, and will there be walking, cycling access along Tagana Boulevard, which is now pretty treacherous?
We hope, and Noah, you might want to comment. Right now, the waterfront trail essentially does use the promenade on the west side to get to the park that's in front of, to the north side of Boatyard Grill. All of this, and I can't speak for Steve Flash, but if we could ultimately come to a goal where what was done at City Harbor with the boat slips, and that a seawall and promenade could also be on the east, we could circle this whole island with the Cayuga waterfront, a spur of the waterfront trail. We will not be privatizing any parts of the waterfront we control. We want the public, and I think Ave feels the same way. We want the public there.
Well, and I'd also add, I think, as an urban planner, designer, I think it's critical that we have public streets with sidewalk infrastructure on both sides of the sidewalks. I think that's a critical feature of any healthy city. And you already have the makings of that with the right of way being a city street effectively. Now, yes, it's kind of a mess right now, but that's one of our concerns is, this does not need to be a privatized situation at this point. It can continue to be public right up to the hotel entrance, which allows, Steve can redevelop this side of the street. This development can happen on the other side of the street, but you have sidewalks on both sides, which will tie into the city's sidewalk network, in addition to waterfront trail. So I think those are really important parts of this plan. And that may distinguish it because we're not asking for that street to go away. We want that street. It's important. And it also, in terms of the parking, the way it's arranged, like I said, this parking is already there, but who knows what it's going to be in the future. By building the infrastructure of a street, that allows this parking lot to be something else, 30 years from now, 50 years from now. It doesn't have to be parking. Maybe we don't need parking 30 years from now. So let's build the infrastructure that allows that to happen.
I think you had some stuff, Leslie, as well. And then I see Cynthia's hand is.
Sure. I apologize. Right when Charlie was asking about the income makeup of the housing, I lost my internet. If you could just really quickly reprise that answer, what the income levels are going to be for the apartments?
Sure. It's 80 to 120% AMI. Right.
Okay. Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't really have any questions. I really like the idea of having housing that's at the moderate income level rather than the luxury level. I like the idea that this is not going to become an exclusive enclave, but also that it's going to, dramatically improve the usage of it, because right now we've got what would be prime real estate that is, really underutilized. And that's strangely the case for a number of waterfront properties in Ithaca that aren't optimizing public recreation or scenic usages or any of those aspects. So I think that your thought for the public access and the public appeal is really great. You didn't talk about it at all here, but Noah, I know your team is very conscious of natural resources and resource use as it goes into construction. So I'm anticipating that when the details come out, you'd be looking at as green a construction, and in particular greening the parking. That would be great to see. So I like what I see so far.
I'd like to share one additional story about we introduced a new concept of the little intimate dinner boats, and we implemented one this summer. It spent a lot of time at the Boatyard Grill because of COVID, and when a boatyard was allowed to open, the Jody Lee, we called it. It's a 18-foot electric launch, and it's powered by electric battery power. The one thing I learned, even with COVID, is that in order for me to take dinner guests, and we use the Boatyard Grill, to the Boatyard Grill, the boat had to be on the dock by 2 in the afternoon, because by 3:30, every boat that was coming to the Boatyard Grill for dinner was already on the dock. We need to change that. We need to get it so that this visitor entity can get there and use this. Transient docks are really important. And Mark said to me, Mark Campanola, and he used to laugh at me, he goes, because he'd see the Joni Lee being brought in early. And he goes, you have a dinner guest? And I says, yes, we do. And I got to be on your dock because you guys are supplying the dinners. And so I just want, it's going to be successful. The energy is there. And having Avi come on board and embrace this type of water business and visitor and townie, and I can say townie because I was born in Ithaca and I'm proud to be a townie. But I see this mix being both strongly for Ithacans as well as visitors. So we're excited about it.
Thanks, Link. Cynthia, I think had some questions, and because I can't see everybody on the same screen because we're sharing the screen, George and Laura, just let me know if you want to jump in. So Cynthia, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation and for allowing me to participate. I really appreciate, Lincoln, the commitment that you have made to making the housing on Inlet Island accessible for average Ithacans. I mean, I really want to tip my hat to you to making a commitment to 100% workforce housing. This is a challenging site, as you know. I wanted to ask a couple of questions. One is to see if you've confirmed the Canal Corp's setback requirement for the flood control channel. If that is, I believe it's 20 feet from the top of the bank. Nels would know this very well. So make sure that that has been incorporated. And then also, how do you plan to address the challenges with regards to the subsurface contamination on the site? I'm going to presume that that's probably the strategic reason that you have commercial on the first floor of housing in order to create that separation additionally between residential and the soil contamination. Anyway, I just wanted to learn more about that. And also, I am concerned with regards to massing. I believe that the previous presentation had indicated that their housing would be approximately the same height as the Island Health and Fitness building next door, which to me actually is just, very, very, very large. To see additional buildings of that same height is concerning to me. So I did want to learn more about that in terms of how big or how tall you think these structures will be.
Okay, so I'm going to start. Cynthia, our team has been meeting with the Canal Corporation on multiple projects. Waterworks, we had a very long meeting with the Canal Corporation last week discussing the setbacks. There is some flexibility in this section of Inlet Canal, the Cuga Inlet there, because of the water businesses that are there, and there's some infringements already existing. So we can summarize those findings probably in about a week and a half using Waterworks as the model, maybe 2 weeks. So we'll get back to you on that. The contamination, the brownfield site, it is probably ground zero underneath the hotel. We believe that it's hard for us to speak to it because we believe that current drilling and soil sampling needs to be done, and then we can address what it's going to take to mitigate it. We don't have that science yet, but we're not going to turn our back on it. We're going to attack it, and as soon as it is appropriate to invest resources to study it, we're going to do it. The other thing that's sort of tied to that, Cynthia, is if you remember in all the presentations, the U.S. Coast Guard right now auxiliary is based on that site, and there's a brick CMU building there. we aren't trying to move that building. We want to take the building out, but we want the Coast Guard Auxiliary to stay and be the ground floor of the north building. That's the residential, the workforce, and call it the Community Waterfront Education Center. It can be used as the Coast Guard. It can be used for Discover Ithaca. It can be used for multiple functions, not just the boater safety course. And so there's a whole bunch of dynamics that are going on here at once. And then I'll have Noah kind of summarize after that.
Sure. This is to address the massing, just so you know. So the project is designed under the new zoning, which allows for 5 stories. However, we're not maxing out the 5 stories for the actual residential. The hotel would be at 5 stories. And actually, I say it will be at 5 stories under our current assumptions. But like I said, given the various program elements and pressures on parking and so forth, maybe we can get away with 4 stories for the hotel. It's not clear to us exactly what Avi's needs are, if we need 110 rooms or we want 80 rooms or we want something else on a different program on the 2nd floor or whatever. So those things are still flexible. The residential portion at 4 stories, there's a couple of different ways that you can treat that. You could do 4 stories where the ground floor is commercial, maybe with a taller, 12 feet floor to floor, something like that, a little taller ceiling for the commercial space. And then maybe 9-foot ceilings on the upper floors. And, you can do 4 stories with a flat roof. You can do 4 stories with a pitched roof on top of that, which actually accentuates how tall it is. Or you can actually do some tricks where you take that 4th story and treat it more like a penthouse that's maybe under the eaves of the roof. And so it looks more like a 3-story building with dormers that kind of give you that extra living space. So there's things that we can do to play with that. It's still early, obviously, but those are things that we're going to start, given the opportunity, we would start looking at the massing of that. But in general, the hotel being a larger structure, not as big as Island Health, though. I mean, even just the footprint of it is significantly smaller than Island Health. Even if the height of it was the same, I don't think you'd have the same feeling of mass with the hotel. And then stepping down to these 2 residential buildings, kind of being in a secondary position to the hotel.
Great, thank you so much.
Great.
Yes, that's very helpful, thank you.
Any follow-ups, Cynthia? I see both George and Laura want to jump in. So
No, go ahead.
No, you're good. All right, George and then Laura, I guess.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for inviting Cynthia and I appreciate that. I'll start with the things I like. I like the fact that Noah's involved in this. I think he has serious skills and he's flexible, and I like that. And I like the fact that we're talking to a local hotelier now. Is it Ari?
Avi.
Avi, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Avi. And I like the fact that he's thinking about locals and that there's some flexibility now concerning the size of the hotel. I also like the fact that that Link is thinking about water and nautical businesses. These are all good things. I'll say in the almost 40 years I've lived here, and I've always kind of gravitated to Inlet Island and the West End. Inlet Island's always been a place of small local businesses. And it may seem underutilized to people who don't live close by or who have different interests, but in my time here, it's always been well utilized. Boats take up space. Used to be a lumber yard across the street where the parking lot is now approximately. The dock and the other iterations of the dock, that same building, in my whole time in this town has been a thriving music venue. Not so much in the last 3 or 4 years, but it's the best sounding nightclub in the city. And now that the Haunt seems to have been gone away, that's an important space, and parking for that space is important. The one thing I don't see in this plan is the opportunity for instituting new small local businesses along Taganic Boulevard. I think that would be a real good thing for Inlet Island. Sort of a fisherman's wharf type of atmosphere where people could walk from one business to another, different restaurants, bars, that type of business that small-time local business operators could run. So I urge you to think about how that might happen. And perhaps that can happen within this hotel idea. But overall, I like this better than I did at first.
George, this is Lincoln. I want to add some things. I so agree with you about the economic engine. At Waterworks, and you know that we have the kayak retail shop, these businesses aren't going away. Waterworks has 3 on-ground commercials. They're small. They're not box store size. They're 900, 1,100 square feet. We envision that, and we're not talking about it today, but from Buffalo Street into the island, that part of the island, we would love to have these little intimate shops that create that energy, that invite you to stroll down and explore them. And to give you an example, Mickey Roof's Jewel Box, multiply that times 10. That's the type of thing we'd like to see. And Mickey's, I think, is about 950 square feet. And again, you don't have to have box store size to do it. It's just a bunch of little stuff is just really inviting.
Yeah, I'm curious to know why you don't think the Puddle Dockers is great right where it is.
Well, believe me, so Jody Denman, who is my partner in Waterworks, she took me to school. She said, this business is staying on the waterfront. I want it to stay on the waterfront. The problem is she made a Navy that is 110 boats. And if you look at the steel building, when all the boats are in racks, most of them have been removed for the winter, but it's a huge footprint, and it would wipe out all of the parking and all the green space to have these paddle boats there. So moving to on Inlet Island, where you see the rental marina right there, also gives it the ability to move there and expands. The one thing that we were burdened with this summer when we did the pop-up business is we allow the public to launch at Puddle Dockers, and we are going to continue to do that. So we need to have access, though, that people aren't carrying kayaks for a block and a half to get them into the water. And so this facility here, to have the rental marina for kayaks, it's better to be on the island and leave the water taxis and the little water shop at Waterworks. You know, we're going to change. George will probably change our mind 100 times. But it's like, but the water or Puddle Dockers isn't going anywhere. It's going to be on the island somewhere.
I'd just like to add, I agree with Noah that parking is going to be a real issue here. And I know Yard Grill and Island Health and Fitness use a predominance of the parking, but they're not the only businesses on the island. And we need to make sure that places like Kelly's and the Dock and the Finger Lakes Boating Center also have space. This is city property, so I think we can be fussy about what we want, and so I think we need to keep that in mind too.
George, I think I've mentioned to you this once before. It was at the open house for Steve's residential building. I'm going to say a dirty word here for some. Inlet Island street and parking must become paid parking, because Mark Campanola, Terry Chowsky, Rachel have all been paying for parking, and a lot of people don't. And I think I should pay for parking. The hotel should pay for parking. it's got to be fair, and it may be a dirty word, but to maintain this infrastructure and a revenue to the city, we've got to have parking meters. Everybody agrees to do it downtown. They're going to agree to do it here. That way, just a select group of 3 businesses, because Island's big or because Mark Campanola's big, that they should pay for it all. I don't agree with that. We got to make it, I'm sorry, but paid parking.
I respectfully disagree, mainly because I'm cheap.
Well, there'll be vouchers. Bear in mind, every business can promote a voucher like they do downtown. It's just, what I don't want is, I want to keep this looking and maintained. And as you know, maintaining parking facilities in Ithaca, it's expensive. And we want it to always be the best it can be.
I think we should rename this committee, Nels, the Parking Development Committee. It seems like it's unavoidable that we're talking about monetizing parking in any meeting here. All right, Laura, over to you.
Thanks very much, Chris. And I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate the presentation. I'm sorry I didn't see Steve Flash's presentation a month ago. To follow the parking theme, I do have a question about the residential buildings and if parking will be available for residents there. Before answering that question, though, I was really pleased to hear Noah's comment that, this space that is currently presented, and I know this is very early in the conceptual stage, but there could be some other future use of what we're seeing right now as flat surface parking. And I think that's very positive to be thinking with some degree of flexibility. But I have a question about parking for residents in the affordable buildings. And then I had a follow-up question as well.
I'm going to let Noah answer mostly about the parking, but I do want to say this, a trend is starting to happen. When City Harbor was going through municipal approvals, we made the commitment that those apartments would only allow 1 car per door. That's the standard that should be minimally accepted. We're hoping, Noah and our team, that we could drop it below the 1 for requirement. In other words, but I think you have to allow at least 1 per door. But there's a lot of workforce people that if you give them the ability to use the waterfront trail, walk to work, I could see that a car share placed on Inlet Island could displace 5 to 6 cars.
Maybe more. Yeah.
Maybe more. But that would be our goal. And we will be reached because it's city lands. Having a car share on Inlet Island just makes an awful lot of sense. Maybe more than 1.
So I'd also add that, Laura, we are, committed to the ideas of transportation demand management and the concept of sort of unbundling parking from housing. They don't have to go together. Many people choose not to have cars. And if you bundle it, then you're sort of requiring them to have a car because they paid for that space. They're going to do something with it. So I sort of envision at this point, especially with Avi's participation compared to a corporate, larger hotel organization, all of this parking is public parking. It's not clear to me at this point whether we have any partners who are going to say, hey, I want 30 spaces or I want 50 spaces. As Link said, this could be all public parking, and it could all be, maybe there are permits for residents that they could choose to buy a space for a year or monthly or something like that. But generally speaking, it's not a guarantee that it would go with the unit. That's kind of just our general philosophy. Now, of course, that could change as different partners get involved, but that's the way I envision it at this point.
Okay, fair. Thanks.
I want to add one more thing to tag on to that, Laura, is the one thing I've learned about, I call them the young hipsters, like Jody's daughters, when they're back, and by the way, when they were back, they were at Argos. This world of Uber and Lyft is like this generation uses them so wisely. And I could see in front of this hotel, it's called an Uber turnaround, an Uber station, where They're just constantly rolling out of there. And this generation is smart about safety, drinking and driving. There is a way to remove cars and utilize modern transportation here because this young generation does it so well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I should say, I'm really so pleased to see Avi's involvement in this development. I'll be very excited to see how it unfolds further. Thinking about transportation and multimodal transportation, I would also hope that you would give some thought to TCAT. When you have residents living on the waterfront and you have hotel guests who may want to take an Uber perhaps, but also perhaps take a bus down to the Commons. You have residents who may want to take a bus to do grocery shopping. So I would hope you'd have some discussions with TCAT folks. I think, as you know, I'm on the TCAT board, so I'd like to promote the use of that public transportation as well.
And I just want to point out, as you know, then the TCAT bus runs right by here on Buffalo. And what's beautiful about this site, obviously, is that it's a very easy walk. And of course, we're expanding the sidewalk infrastructure and everything to get there. You know, if TCAT wanted to come closer, that's great. But even if they don't, this is really accessible to get from, if you lived here, to jump on TCAT, go downtown, go to Cornell, go to Wegmans. It's pretty easy to do, which is great.
Thanks.
George, do you want to jump back in? Is that?
Yeah, just very quickly. I'm not muted, am I?
No.
Okay. Just a reminder, and I spoke with Link about this the other day. One of the main economic drivers for the West End has always been people who work in Ithaca and live west of Ithaca or on West Hill. And so people that on their way home from work stop at a restaurant or a bar or another business. So those people drive. And so we should be conscious of the fact that we're going to need more parking than just for city residents. And what's nice about these people is they go through the West End and on Inland Island in January and February and March when tourists aren't as likely to be here. So there are local tourists, if you will, even as far away as Elmira, Geneva, Auburn, etc.
We want them to come, George.
Yep.
Any other questions? Leslie, yeah, go ahead.
So this is not a question. Again, I don't have any questions, but I wanted to make another comment. It's not about this project specifically, but just a term that was used by most of the folks in this meeting today that I have kind of a personal mission to try to eliminate, which is namely workforce housing. And this committee has heard me expound on this before, but I wanted to point out two things. One is that for most people, they don't know what that means. And calling it moderate income housing or middle income housing might make more sense, even if you don't know what the dollar figures are. At least you get what the workforce is. But the other thing that I find a little more problematic is it's got this implication that low income housing is going to people who aren't in the workforce. And that's not true at all. People who are making 80% or 50% or 30% are usually working, and they're working for substandard wages, which is why they can't afford better quality housing. So I point that out, not to sound like a nag, but just to consider that most of us at all income levels are part of the workforce.
Yeah, Leslie, thanks for that. Not a nag at all. It's just great to have that brought back again. And I see that Noah's already taken a few notes there.
Thanks. Noah.
I mean, I'll only make like two comments. One is, I don't know how you manage to like put more uses and more parking spaces on the island at the same time. So I hope all the math there works, because that's not normally what we're struggling with, right? We're normally struggling with creating more things that generate housing or economic development activity, and then trading off the discussion about parking. And and I think George's last comments are really apropos. Like, you have commuters who are going to stop by here on the way home. They need some place to put their car, even if it's temporarily. And the other thing that really struck me that I've really been thinking about is, George's suggestion about some strip of, micro retail or something along Teganic Boulevard there. That's a really intriguing idea. I know it might sacrifice some parking spaces, but I like the vision and the feel of that continuing from, basically that strip of kind of retail and restaurants and already that is sort of already down the other end, and continuing that into this development and leading into the hotel, and just creating that space that is not just a couple of uses, but really starts to kind of mix up the kinds of eclectic things that might be down there, and be supported both by the people who are living there and the tourists who are using the restaurants and the hotels and the boating environment and so on. So I just wanted to highlight that because I thought that was an intriguing suggestion. I don't know how it would get squeezed in everything else you're doing without losing 232 parking spaces. But Nels, go ahead.
Just to dovetail on that, Chris, it might be worth talking to John Guttridge or someone of that sort of mind frame, because he's done wonders taking miniature spaces at Press Bay and turning them into really enticing places to be. And especially given that you're going to have a hotel crowd, people looking for the cool and the unique coming from other areas, that's something interesting for visitors in particular.
Or the other thing could be like to just use the idea of the floating infrastructure you were talking about before, Link. Is it could also be that it's semi-permanent infrastructure that can pop up things from like May to October when you have like peak outdoor time and more people using the hotel and so on. That there may be some entrepreneurs who are interested in serving some kind of business, for
absolutely. Right? The food truck business, when on the street, PETA showed up at Mickey Roof brought him in. He was there for just a few months. He said, I'm just going to come for a few months. He's there permanently now. He's staying all winter. So it will support it. And if you look at from Mickey Roofs through our waterworks site, Kelly's dock site, and the building where the dock is, that is going to be an amazing strip of real estate. You promote workforce housing, the boat, the hotel, and it's going to create a feeding frenzy for small opportunities there for business. It's the first people that break the ground that struggle to get things going, but once it happens, it feeds on itself. I think you'll see the Mickey Roof site when Mickey decides what she's going to do. She's a strong retailer. If you talk to her about anything, it's going to be retail first floor all the way down through. There's again, the synergy is just starting to grow. And I wanted to make one last comment about the parking. What you don't see in here is where Finger Lakes Boating Center is. There's about 70 parking spaces along there that aren't being shown. And when I grew up, our family's first boat was in that marina. All that parking along there was for boat owners. There were no boats stored on dry dock cradles there. And that's one of the things I can't tell Steve what to do with his property, but there's 70 parking spaces there that would be more like a city harbor model where you park in front of your boat or the public parks. But that would support Steve's marina as well. But 70 parking spaces is a lot of parking spaces.
Okay, Nels, any fast
comments? Yeah, I just had a clarification. Yeah, clarification question here really is the project, shows a lot of public components, park, walkways, dockage, parking. And I just want to be clear what your expectations are of the city or the IRA to either, invest in that or manage it. I just want to get an understanding whether your expectations are the city and IRA will play a large role in that, or will it really be passive? We're selling, development sites and the developers take it away from there.
I think that's going to be a longer conversation, Nels, but I think that let's take, for example, the workforce housing. If the city were to look at an acquisition for a developer, and I'm not saying it's waterfront alchemy, and say, hey, here's a site, we want to see that, we want to guarantee it's workforce housing, and maybe we can change the fundamental dynamics of what it would cost to live there. But if the city were to, which can control the acquisition cost there, you can contribute to the success of that project. We have a brownfield site underneath the hotel, and that scares everybody today. It didn't scare Avi, but I think the cost of real estate, if Avi's going to buy the site or our development group's going to buy the site, we just want the city to be conscious that for right now, it's been a brownfield site and a boat storage parking lot. If we're going to make the jump to a revenue producing destination visitor hotel, we're going to look at, if it was an acquisition, we want it to be priced to promote that, to happening. As Noah pointed out with the parking, it's a gravel parking lot right now. And though it isn't a complete eyesore, I'd like to see these tree islands defined and some maybe porous asphalt, but to improve its look. But again, I think this is going to be along how the city can contribute with its costing exercise to promote development. There's more than one developer here. There's a hotel developer, a housing developer, a businesses entity development from commercial. So we're willing to discuss all options.
The second clarification was regarding the Finger Lakes Boating Center's take in and take out the marine lift operation they have there. Yep. You've respected, the property line there in the project, and it's all on private property. But I believe we've heard in prior meetings that it requires some room beyond just the takeout. The boat has to go somewhere when it's taken out of water, going in the water. How do you envision continuing that to operate feasibly in the future? Do you see that operationally your project would impinge on that, or would allow it to continue to operate successfully?
If I had a perfect storm, Nels, I'm a marina guy. I've run 2 marinas. I know about boats. I see this as an encumbrance. I believe that a modern marina needs to be born here. So 75% of the deep keel sailboats that come out of the water here are put on a hydraulic trailer and hauled over to the state marinas parking lot. Why don't we take the effort it takes to go approach the state and say, let's put in a travel lift slip here and haul them and put them there, so that I'm not saying that the travel lift has to come out, but it really is not where are we going to put all these boats on cradles? And we're either going to have a big boat parking lot on Inland Island, or we're going to have what you see here. As I think we ought to take the effort. If it was my marina to run, I'd move the travel slip to the state marina, and I'd have all the smaller boats under 25 feet use the state marina's launch facility, and do the same thing City Harbor did. All boats are dry docked and winter stored at a different site. Steve's already doing it at the state marina. It's just not I have waterworks. So in the middle of the fall, there's a travel lift. There can be boats sitting in the middle of Teganic Boulevard for a couple hours as they get ready to stage and move them. Again, I think the marinas, I love boats. I love marinas. But I think we need to really make this a little bit more efficient as a marine operation. It's one of the reasons why Krenzer reached out to me. But I love the ability to work with Steve to figure out how we can make all of this work and use the financial capability of us as a combined entity to make the marina better. And I'm going to be frank with you, Nels. Stand in the front of this hotel and look to the east. What you're going to see is a 2-story ugly steel building that has not changed in 50 years. You can't even see the waterfront. We've got to modernize that marina, but it's not mine to modernize. I think we got to have marina function there, and I think that there should be boats all over the place. But we can't, City Harbor, Johnson's Boatyard site had these same steel buildings. The last one was torn down 18 years ago by the Cleveland family. And it now is a marine facility that you see. Watkins Glen has a stacked storage, but I think that this is a great discussion to have to make this a better community access and a better looking marina. It'd be great to see the waterfront from Inland Island instead of looking at that marina. Just my opinion.
Thank you.
All right. This is great. I'm glad actually we had the time on the agenda to give this a full discussion. It was really helpful. Thank you all to the development team for really engaging with us, and Laura, Cynthia, George, great to have you guys here as well. I think we have just a couple of other quick items of business, Nels, and then we can probably adjourn. Is that right? You're on mute. Sorry. Still on mute.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Yeah, there's no action item coming out of this discussion. And again, there'll be an RFEI in which we'll, maybe have further projects come in, or maybe these projects will be refined and come in somewhat different shape than they are currently. The only other thing on the agenda was just an update item, if you're ready for that. No, you're muted.
Sorry. Zoom life. Yeah, that's fine to do the update item. Guests are welcome to stay or leave as you feel like it. If you have better things to be doing with your afternoon, feel free to go. This obviously discussion will be continued, and the rest of us we'll take your update item, Nels. Thanks.
Actually,
Thank you very
before
much.
before we go on to the update,
Oh.
Nels, can you tell us the time frame for the RFEI and next steps?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the RFEI out this, by the end of this week or advertised next week, so that we can give about a 60-day time frame for people to respond to that. Again, it's for conceptual concepts and some additional information about the development teams and their, ability to undertake a project like this. But again, and then the next steps would be to, review those, and the IRA would decide whether any of those should advance to the Common Council for further discussion. One way for that discussion to be framed is for the city to make a decision whether they want to offer the property that the city owns to the IRA for the purposes of facilitating a project. So they could vote on the issue of transfer of land, subject to an approved urban renewal project. Could be the way that the council could give their indication whether they support advancing with the project that's presented from the IRA. That's the thought, and that would be probably, not before springtime. It's going to take several months, I think, to go through this process and get a project that the IRA supports conceptually before we bring it forward to the Common Council.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Nels, what else?
Yeah, the only update here was just to give you a sense on where we stand with our loans, and we have a number of loans that have some COVID deferrals on them. Those have, for the most part, been upheld, but we are 2 months behind now with the Canopy Hotel. So I've reached out to them and asked for an update on where they stand and what their plans are going forward. They're 2 months behind. And then, of course, Green Star, one of our larger loans recently, had a furloughing of several employees. We had issued a loan for the West End store that was of 24 job creations, and they've just announced 17 furloughs. Some of those are part-time and some are full-time. So we're, and actually about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we started discussing with them whether they were going to make their 1-year timeline for job creation, which they offered. Usually we offer 2 years for job creation. So that's probably an expectation will be coming forward at a future meeting, a request to extend the time period to hit their job goal, because they're clearly not going to make it in the short term here with COVID issues. They really do focus a lot on bringing people together to the store, and that's not an easy thing to do in a COVID environment where everybody is socially distancing. So their business model has been pretty severely impacted outside of the straight grocery shopping kind of things. And some of those sections have really expanded, but they haven't had that kind of gathering activities at the store. So just want to give you an update that they did create 17 of the 24 jobs at a snapshot in time, and we will continue to require quarterly reporting until they hit the 24 full-time equivalent jobs. Just wanted to give you an update on where that stands. So there's probably an upcoming item at a future month to discuss a little more detail with Green Star.
Okay, so you are anticipating that they will come with some sort of formal request to extend the time?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's
and are they, what's the status of their loan they're on interest only or total deferral, or where are they right now in terms of loan repayment?
That's a good question. They are current. Let's put it that way. They're current on their loan with us. I'm not sure. I think they're still at the very end of their interest only period. I don't know if
Okay.
they've begun the principal and interest payments.
Right. So we might, yeah, we'll have to see.
I'll double check on that. This is an early meeting in the month, so we don't really get all of our loan materials until about today. So I can give you an update when we've in the next week on where that stands.
Okay. Yeah. Just if you get any other news, obviously, that's relevant, and then we'll just take it up at the January meeting.
They just had 6 months of interest only.
Okay,
Oh.
so they're past that.
Past that.
Okay.
They're past
Thanks,
that. Thank you, Charles.
Quick with the numbers. Appreciate that. Okay.
Nels, when did you say their year is up? The year for the job creation?
Yeah, it's usually a year from the date of the loan. Wait, no, it's a year from the date they open. So I think it's not imminent to us. I mean, it's in the next couple of months, but it's not like it happened in November. Again, when they come in for a discussion, we'll work on that. We have routinely provided 2 years for job creation. It's just that they asked for only 1 year, and we said, okay, if you can do it in 1 year, we'll lock that into the agreement. But we probably should have been smarter and said it's a little hard to anticipate what's going to happen going forward. So it's very routine
They were so bullish on the sales goals of the new location, right? And obviously the pandemic wasn't on the radar screen, but even without the pandemic, they were quite bullish on their sales goals, right? So
yeah, based on the square footage and the expansions they were planning to do, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay. Any other business? No? Charlie, yep.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about new members. Did we reach out to the members we've kind of already mentioned, or are we looking for other?
No, I've reached out to the mayor to let him know about the list and waiting for a response for him. It usually takes a couple of back and forth before they get it. I mean, he's got so many appointments he makes that I think it's more getting the attention for these appointments. That's the tricky thing. I don't want to reach out to somebody yet until I know that they're within the realm of a member that, somebody that the mayor would consider appointing.
Okay.
So that's where we're waiting on that step. And I appreciate the names you've nominated, Charlie.
Okay. Yeah, I had another one if you needed another one, but
yep, send them in, send it on.
Add it to the list. That's great.
Okay.
And does he?
I'll send it to you, Nels, with the CC to the other committee members.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. And does he appoint them to our committee as chair of the agency or as mayor of the city? How does that work?
I believe the bylaws authorize the chair of the IURA to appoint the committee members.
Okay. Right. So he's doing it as the chair. Okay. Any other queries or other business from anybody else? We'll just confirm then the January date for quorum. Right. So it's going to be
January 12th.
Everybody.
Good.
Thumbs up from Doug, Charlie, Leslie's nodding. Okay, good. So we'll have full committee meeting at that time. Terrific. All right. This is our last meeting of 2020. Thanks, everybody. It's been a very full year for this committee. So I really appreciate all the work that we got done. Sorry, we can't celebrate in person. But
and no cookies.
I know, and no cookies. But somewhere in 2021, we will have cookies. We'll frequent one of our, supported businesses, and we will celebrate everything that we accomplished in this challenging year, I think.
Well, Santa may be able to get around locally here. We'll see what we can do.
Well, I miss seeing all of you, but good riddance to 2020.
Yeah,
You're here. You're here.
All right. See you all. Nels, I still have that binder in my office.
Just drop it off
by your house one day the next few days. Okay.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Be well, everyone.
Bye.